is the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is John Ashley. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Octus Surgical. We're focused on solving the problem of scoliosis, which is a huge unmet need in girls' and women's health. So we've got a very experienced team. I've been in this industry for over 30 years, 7 different startups, 2 IPOs, all told returned over $1.25 billion to investors. My other co-founders also have extensive experience. Murali Kadaba and Damian Shulock worked with me at a previous startup in the spine space. We developed an interbody fusion cage that we sold to Stryker at a 16x multiple after 2 rounds of funding. And Murali also worked at another spine startup that was acquired by Boston Scientific. On top of that team, we've added Dylan Quad, who has experience in this magnetic adjusting technology, which I'm going to share with you. We've got a great advisory group too, both on the business side with Tom Assel from Octus Orthopedics, as well as a former CEO of Spinal Kinetics, and top spine surgeons in the adult and pediatric space. These are advisors as well as co-founders, because we went out to the market with a product idea for this space, and these doctors sat down with us and we came up with our current product. So it's something that met their requirements and their needs. So adolescent idiopathic scoliosis is a very prevalent disease. It affects over 1 million children that are diagnosed every year within the United States alone. It's a progressive disease, and when it gets severe, it is worse in girls that compared to boys at a 10-to-1. It's a lateral curvature of the spine, which you can see on the picture of my friend Maya here. She was a really active girl, daughter of one of my college classmates. And at the age of 10, she was diagnosed with scoliosis. As it gets worse, the first thing they do is prescribe an external brace. That's this one inset picture. As you can imagine, in these young prepubescent girls, this isn't something that's looked upon favorably to have to wear this brace, 20 hours a day minimum. There's low compliance. And even if the child wears this brace for several years, a successful use of the brace means that their spine doesn't get worse. The brace doesn't straighten out their spine. It's just there to try to prevent it from getting worse as they grow older. As a result, it's ineffective for a high percentage of these children, and 40,000 every year in just the US alone end up having surgery. You can see this incision on Maya's back. She was cut open from the base of her neck to the top of her hips. Her skin and muscles flayed open, and 2 solid titanium rods and dozens of screws were added. Yes, it straightens the spine, but it locks it in place. So now there's no more movement of that spine and no more growth. So Maya, who was a ballet dancer, skier, soccer, all those activities were ended because she couldn't do those with these rods in her back. As well, there's lifetime issues, cumulatively about 40% complication rate over the life of that child as they grow. And importantly, there's big pregnancy complications for these girls when they get to that age, including 75% having sustained pain after delivery, 35% having to be hospitalized during their pregnancy. Octus is focused on changing this problem by preserving the motion of that spine, not fusing it, by allowing that spine to grow so these children can get to their full heights and obviously maintain all their activities, and to be able to adjust the device after surgery without having to go back in. One surgery and done. So this is how we do it. We place a device on the side of the spine through minimally invasive incisions, just 3 or 4 small 1-inch incisions. The device is a very high tension tether, which is attached at the top of the curve. And at the bottom of the curve, it's wrapped around this implanted magnetic gearbox. And I can demonstrate this to you afterwards. After the initial surgery, when the child comes back for checkups, every 3 to 6 months in the doctor's office, they can take an x-ray, see what the spine curvature is, and then use a handheld device to couple to the implant and change the tension and length of the tether as needed to provide a personalized solution for each child so it can grow with them get the spine straight and allow them to continue their sports and movement. So not only is this an important solution for these children, it's a great market opportunity. Our beachhead market are the children who are going through these spinal fusions right now. And that's going to be our first indication. On top of that, several of these children and their parents and their families avoid this surgery because it's so harsh and wait until they're fully grown. When they're 18, 20, 22, they go through this as young adults. That's the secondary market. On top of that, our advisors and pretty much every surgeon I talk to says, wow, this works. This is a better solution than those braces. So that opens up the market quite a lot for those children who are wearing braces that don't really solve the problem. On top of that, this is a product that can be used in adult markets such as adult degenerative scoliosis and kyphosis. So this is a product category that's brand new. The fusion is what's been done for 40 years on the market, but Zimmer, which has now been spun out into a company called High Ridge, repurposed an old product to treat scoliosis. That's a flexible static tether. They screw it in and they can't adjust it. It's beginning to build this market for us, which is great, but they're reporting 20% of the time the product breaks. That's actually 15% it overcorrects. So that ends up as a 35% failure rate. Globus Medical copied their product because it's an older product, doesn't have any patent protection. So they obviously see this as an emerging market. But both of these are limited because of their failure rates at 35%. And we can adjust and address all of those things. We have a tether that's more than twice the strength of theirs, but more importantly, it's 10 times more durable because these things are breaking because of wear over time. So we're going to address that breakage rate. And then our adjustability, we can address the overcorrection. They don't even report as a failure the fact that they undercorrect, but the clinical data shows 17% they undercorrect, and we can address that as well. So we have an excellent FDA relationship. We've done 4 pre-subs with the FDA defining all our testing protocols and clinical pathway. We also have breakthrough device designation, which means we have expedited reviews with them. And there is coding coverage and payment already for this product. Zimmer did the heavy lifting in the beginning, and now they've continued to that. There's permanent CPT codes now for this. And this is about a $30,000 to $50,000 payment to us. So we don't have the numbers that some of the other companies have, but we have much higher sales price. So massive gross margins with this product. Here's our projected sales in the first 4 years, at which time we would achieve profitability. But this is still, the first 3 years. This still is 4 years out because of the FDA approval. But so this is the timeline of the company. We've accomplished everything I've shared with you today for about $850,000 between our friends and family pre-seed and non-dilutive awards. We're raising a $3 million seed that'll get us to an IDE approval from the FDA, at which time we'll raise a Series A to fund the clinical study. It is a 2-year study, but just 50 patients. With the study completed, we believe we'll be able to exit. If not, we'll raise a Series B for commercialization. Either way, we see this as a big return for investors at this point. So Octus is making a difference in this huge underserved condition for women and girls. These kids and their parents are looking for better treatment options, and surgeons are waiting to shift into this market for a better solution. Thank you so much. Happy to give you a demo and answer any.
Did you put the term sheet up there for the deal terms?
We're currently raising on a convertible note at $3 million at a $9 million post, and 20% discount and 10% interest. And we put $250,000 in the bank, have about another $350 committed.
The 3 million on 9 million folks.
Yeah.
I saw that you had something about a preclinical study and we talked.
that I zipped past.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
How do I go down? We are in preclinical. We've done implants in pigs, 3-month study where after implanting it, we came back every 2 weeks, took a plain x-ray. So, this is scoliosis. The outcome is determined by what's the curvature of the spine, how straight it is. So that's how it works in patients. So we would take an x-ray image shown here of the animal every 2 weeks, and then we would do an adjustment, non-invasively, and show that we could change the curve from, say, 8 degrees to 20 degrees. or 15 degrees down to 5 degrees, depending on which way we were doing the adjustment. Sure, we could go both directions, increasing tension, decreasing tension. At the end of the 3 months, we explanted the devices. There were no failures, nothing broken, everything performed as it was designed and intended.
Is your FDA claim pediatric or?
Yeah, the initial indication is going to be skeletally immature, children, meaning they're still growing, and a curve of more than 40 degrees. That's the beachhead market. And from there, we expanded the lower curves, older kids, and then adults.
What are the top three skills you have to be successful in this type of company, and how do you have those skills?
Interesting question. Well, I think that, probably the top skill is experience in this market. It's a particular market with regulatory requirements, lots of paperwork, quality systems, lots of testing. So certainly my team and I have combined over 80 years of experience in those areas: clinical studies, regulatory, product development, and testing.
Well, we finished our first cohort, and now comes the most important part of the day. Who can tell me what the most important part of the day is right now? Give me a hint, it's not the food. Feedback. Everybody guesses the food. Feedback, that's right. So we're going to take our cards now. We're going to take a moment, and there is a QR code here for the group. This is the early afternoon group. If you just go ahead and snap a picture of that, log on, you can actually give us some feedback online. If that doesn't work for you, or you would rather just do it on paper, have paper there in front of you. Just put it on paper. It's fine. One of the other works as well. So we'll just take the next 60 seconds, everybody do that, and then we'll capture people's information, and then we'll talk about the rest of the day and what we're going to do next. But the two things I wanted to bring up for everybody in the room is that some of the things that we're working on is we have gotten into AI tools, and one of the things we've been doing with AI tools is creating due diligence reports. We're able to go through and take your data room and create the core content that goes into a diligence package. Been working with the Keiretsu guys on it, and if Keiretsu, they've got very high-end due diligence reports, hundreds of pages. We're trying to do something more mid-range where we just take all your data room, put in a set of folders, and then create like 6-page documents out of it. And from that, you as an entrepreneur would review that content, make sure it's clean. It's like 10 pages for each of those different reports. It talks about sales and marketing, IP contracts, and other, science and technology and risks in the deal. And then AI generates a list of potential risks in that sector. If medical device has one list, enterprise software is another risk. And you go through and you start answering those questions to put it in there. And so the idea is with the group I've been working with, we've been able to cut the time in half, because in the past we would just go to the founder and say, well, give us your 10-page report on your sales and marketing, and you're sitting down writing it all out. And here AI writes it out for you. You read it, approve it, make sure it's not hallucinating anything, and you're adjusting it. The drawbacks we've seen so far is that it does not move graphs and charts over very quickly and cleanly. You have to do that manually. So that's one of the things we're working on now, is how do we get it moved over? And it also limits you to about 3,000 words in current AI systems, and we're getting tools that will let us go up to 10,000 words. So for bigger applications, we can do more. So if you're interested in learning more about how we can generate a due diligence report for you, for your angel group, or for your just for yourself, we can help create those. And then that gives the investor basically something to review as opposed to something to go right. And like I say, that's a huge time saving. The other thing we found when we had the data room was we could go do an analyst report. So for starters in the room, if you want to make your deal, instead of just sending the deck out, I want to work with a retail investor. I could actually create an analyst report that looks like something that came out of Morningstar, and it has all your market information, it has all your data up there, and it looks like more of a standard tool that you could use out there. Again, you have to read those things and make sure that is accurate in what it's saying there. And then you can then either get a professional analyst come in and give their commentary, or you just leave it in that format to say, this is what it looks like, and so forth. So if anybody's interested in those tools, let me know. We're building those out to kick off next year with it. Armin, do you have any thoughts about those things?
On organizing the diligence material, that's what we were talking about.
That's one of them, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to do this exactly the standard way. That's all I can say. I mean, you guys put so much thought into all these things. I think you know what you're doing. But I think it's, there's questions that come up in these things. Like one of the questions that comes up is in terms of prior rounds of capital. And if you look at kind of like the companies that are doing these things, they're doing it as different valuations. And one of the things that you guys questions will come back to you is when you think about the valuation. So the question is how you guys, if you guys are launching this thing and you guys are the babies and they're saying, what is the valuation look like? 20%, 25% the right number of ownership interest for some of these companies. So I was just trying to kind of like pitch this thing around the valuation so that the valuations are normalized for these companies when they're going out. Your group actually is that it's pretty good valuations on the raises, but sometimes you go to these pitches and the graduate school business and the stack your pitches and stuff and companies with zero revenues expecting a $3 million safe and $45 million pre-money valuation, which doesn't make any sense. That's I think that one of the big points that you guys should come with these guys as far as your diligence. And on the rest of the diligence material, the competition is one that swayed every which way. So you probably have to do some diligence, something like that. When the competition, for example, they're telling you something about links, the non-hydration company. The competition for that is quite was not just hydration, right? So they can do all the supplements, they can do a lot of other things. And it would be something interesting that in your slides, and you give some suggestions. The slide on competition picture is accurate.
For the idea of valuation, that really goes back to the lead investor, the investor putting the money in, is how do you justify that valuation in your mind? And what are your arguments, Mr. Investor? And their name is on that. It's the key we found with due diligence reports. I can put my on there, but if I'm not investing, what does that mean? It means nothing. So you really have to have the core content, have the investor view on it. And then when we get into the analyst side of it, it really depends on who do you want to review it. Who is a third party that would maybe have a big name or maybe have a strong expertise, like a clinician would be able to do some medical devices and put their thought leadership behind it, but they're putting a name on it too. So this is where people, you want to state your reputation on that, for it's question. So, like I say, the core content was where we were spending most of our time is building that stuff up. And then investors coming in always had questions, which is kind of an iterative process and we're answering them. And that process still has to run forward as well. So cool.
I think just one thing I was talking to one gentleman here that part the column that goes in about this two different parts and the pain matches and stuff. The numbers were crazy. 4 years about $64 billion of sales. It's like there's not that many companies that when I said $64 billion sales. So it's a little bit, and then I was start to explain to them, I think we have a lot of lawyers on our and then we got video. But I think you may want to just suggest to them that before they come here, they bet their renters as long as they have $30 to $40 million of revenues in 5 years, those are good numbers. You want to earn 64 in 4 years, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It takes time to get up there. I find forecasts tend to normalize over an 18-24 month period after we go forward. Everybody thinks it's going to rocket upwards, and we find out what the real choke points are, cost of sales and so forth. Well, then it starts to get back down.
Because that's a credibility issue for them when they present you under your brand.
And we try to talk them down from the ledge, but they're up there for a while. But they will come down eventually. I hear you, and I agree.
Yeah.
It's out there a little bit for sure.
But the competition side would be really important. Make sure everybody in the competition side when they're coming in with their pitches.
Okay, that's good feedback. All right, great. With that, let's go ahead and kick into our next pitch. So we have with us Aritica. Come on up and just click forward and you should be ready to go. Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for your time and attention today. My name is Charlie Kim. I'm here on behalf of Aritica Corporation. I'm a scientific advisor to them. The CEO couldn't be here today, but I'm also an angel investor in the company. It's something I really believe in. And hopefully over the next few minutes, I'll be able to tell you why that is. So the story really behind Iridica starts millennia ago when, with the recognition that blood was a really critical part of maintaining health, right? Hippocrates, the founder of our US medical system, was basically writing even back then about the four humors and how you had to keep these in balance. And then fast forward to today, 2 millennia later, and I feel like we are actually just at the beginning of starting to harness the blood for therapeutic benefit. I can't think of a better example of this than the case of Emily White, who some of you might have heard of. So back in 2010, Emily White was 5 years old. She was an end-stage leukemia patient, a couple of weeks out from passing away. And she was lucky enough and had relentless parents who got her into one of the first clinical trials for a cell therapy. This is chimeric antigen receptor T-cell therapies, or CAR T therapies. And fast forward to today, 14 years later, she's a vibrant 19-year-old and one of the strongest ambassadors for CAR T therapies in the world. And since then, another dozen or so cell therapies have been approved, tens of thousands of patients treated. And it's just a remarkable story in terms of what's possible when you go from just humors to actually understanding the basic cellular and molecular biology underlying these sorts of processes and even manipulating them for therapeutic benefits. And this is just the beginning. Again, like I said, this has been a decade and a half in this massive existence where we're seeing this. This is really just the beginning. More therapies are coming in the cell therapy space, all the next generation CAR Ts that are safer and more efficacious. My wife actually leads research at a big major pharma company in the space. Also, other immune cell types are now being manipulated, like NK cells and macrophages, in order for all sorts of therapeutic applications, and also remarkable progress just in the last couple of years in applying CAR Ts outside of oncology. Autoimmune disease, if you look at the publications, have just phenomenal. And now there are hundreds of companies getting into the autoimmune space and cell therapies. The thing that comes next, along with all these novel therapies, immune-targeted therapies, is diagnostics. We have no idea. There are so few immune-targeted diagnostics right now on the market. There's a massive need for better diagnostics. Lots of companies in this space, including those startups and some big companies who are making forays. Immunology is the new oncology is something you hear a lot from these companies. And then, of course, the research fueling all of them. There's an appetite, massive appetite of AI for larger data sets that currently don't exist when it comes to these kinds of molecular data sets. The fundamental problem here is this: getting immune cells in a very repeatable, high quality way is very difficult right now. It's done in a very manual process that operators use pipettes at multiple stages throughout the isolation process. And the amount of effort it takes to standardize this across study sites is enormous. And even then you come out with mediocre results. This is a major barrier to scaling what we need to enable AI, to enable better products to be developed. This is just a simple schematic of blood, and when it's separated, the different components. We use the plasma already in the diagnostic space quite extensively, metabolites, CAM, etc., proteins. And then the red blood cells typically are discarded. And what we really care about here in this particular space is the immune cells. And that is where you just have to get that one little layer sandwiched in between all this other garbage that's otherwise a contaminant. And guess what? People are different in how they do that. That's the problem. This is a really complex workflow. It's dozens of steps. So all these little variations between operators compound as you go throughout this process. This is how this is done in every single research lab, both in industry and academics right now. It's a major barrier to scaling. Iridica already has a lot of progress on developing the right solution for this with automated push-button automation for an end-to-end automated procedure. These are some images of the initial prototypes. I also have one here. These are just the 3D printed versions. You can see there are these chambers for buffers and fluidics that are controlled by valves that are populated throughout this. And then in the end, you get one tube of plasma, one tube with the immune cells. It's literally push button after you've loaded the blood sample into the cartridge.
And then it does require a custom centrifuge. Iridica has partnered with a major centrifuge manufacturer to do some of the customization. There's some electronics required to actuate the valves. The injection molded versions of these will be coming to us. The first batches will be available next month. They're in manufacturing right now, final design and manufacturing. And then the centrifuges will be ready in December. And I mentioned at the beginning that I'm both an investor and advisor. I'm investing my money and my time. And the reason for that is when I look at what these guys have done, it's just amazing to me. It beats the current manual process on every single metric. Usually you have to compromise as you bring technology in. It's usually more expensive, or is there some other cost, expensive CapEx? But not only are they going to be on the consistency and quality, but it's a faster process. You can parallelize a lot more. You just need centrifuges. There's one pipetting step. Normally you have one operator handling one or just a few samples at a time. It's very slow. It's going to be cheaper. Labor is the most expensive cost, of course. And so the amount of scale you can achieve and repurposing that labor for other things is really astronomical when you start scaling this. And I'll talk a little bit about scale. And the amount of consumables is dramatically reduced through this automated process. The initial market that Iridica wants to go after is the research market. So actually the largest market, ironically enough. More of these procedures are performed, tens of millions of these procedures are performed in the research market annually in order to try to develop these products. And it's a fantastic place to also bring a new product into the world because it's not regulated at all. This is, of course, a much more regulated market. Those are opportunistic later down the line in a few years as the business grows, assuming that the research market is going very well. Competition, to your point, this is not a totally new space, but the major point to make here is that none of the competition have really envisioned their products for this particular application in an automated way. They were designed at different times or broader applications, instruments that can do a bunch of different things. None of them fit for purpose. And as a result, they're really lacking in a lot of the features needed to completely revolutionize this particular workflow. A lot of market research has been done, but I think the thing that I'd share with you is that I'm the customer. So both at my time in my previous two positions, I was on the faculty, a professor in the Department of Medicine at UCSF, doing a lot of blood isolation for human subjects research. And then most recently, I was at a company called Verily. It's the life sciences and healthcare branch of Google or Alphabet. And at one point, my team was running over 3,000 of these procedures per year for 2 studies alone. I was dying for something like this. People were quitting because they were just machines doing this over and over again, and keeping that staff working was really tough. This is an area that hasn't been seeing any innovation for 30, 40 years. It is ripe for something like this to enable scale. It's not sexy, it's picks and shovels, but it's truly revolutionary in my opinion. I won't go through these numbers so much. We do think there's a fantastic research-only market. The 3-year market is based on research. The 5-year includes some clinical with excellent gross margins around this. And these numbers, don't put too much stock in these numbers. They're actually in revision right now. And then lots of opportunities for strategic partnerships and exit. The idea isn't to make our own centrifuges and to sell this all to ourselves in terms of scale. There are lots of great companies who have excellent distribution networks, excellent customer footprint and brand. So there are lots of conversations with quite a few folks on this, not just the centrifuge and consumables manufacturers, but also pharma, who's very interested in these kinds of technologies for enabling their clinical trials. And then the leadership team really wanted to highlight this team is astonishing in terms of this. This is often a 20-minute conversation in our long form presentations, where the number of products that this team has launched in both the life sciences technology space and also clinical diagnostics during their time at various diagnostic companies is astonishing. I'm kind of the exception. I'm the outlier here. I'm the researcher, but really, really experienced team who has launched dozens of products into the world over their time, plus signed on a couple of business advisors. Stan Lapidus, co-inventor of the modern pap test and also co-inventor of the Cologuard test, which some of you might have heard about. He's currently the founder and CEO of Exact Sciences. And then the ex-CFO of Illumina has just joined us as well as a business advisor. Current round is raising $2 million. We're about a little less than 20% of the way there. Goal is to get these injection molded devices into the hands of a limited set of customers with this to get feedback and also to prepare for version 2.0 of the device that'll prepare for scaling. Team's thinking a lot about what else can be implemented since this is such an automated platform. They has electronics embedded in it. Lots of thinking about the kinds of sensors that will make this an even more end-to-end process. Typically, you count the cells and measure their viability at the end. Team has good ideas about how to implement that as into the V 2.0. And then, of course, thinking even beyond that about implementing other kinds of methods as well. And thanks very much for your time.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.